Hi, this is Steve Clark with John Knox Village. Welcome to today's event, the Paint and Sip, with our artist here, our resident, Jan Mallot. We're going to have a little introduction here and we're going to get things going. I hope you enjoy today. It should be a lot of fun. Let's go. So hi Jan, how are you doing today?
Doing great, thanks.
And you're a resident here at John Knox Village, right?
Yes, I've been a resident here for 3 years.
3 years, okay.
Yes, and I had only moved in for 2 months until someone discovered my background,
right,
and immediately volunteered me to do some art classes.
Okay, and we're here in the art studio today at John Knox Village.
Yes.
And we're here for the Paint and Sip event, and you're going to show us show us all watching right now how we're going to do this painting, right? And you're going to walk us through all the different steps.
Yes, we're going to go through it. We're going to paint together.
Okay, so what supplies should everybody have that's watching this right now to start with?
Okay, first you should have a canvas, and this is a canvas that's most popular right now. As you can see, the canvas is wrapped onto the back of the stretchers and stapled there, so there's no staples along the side.
Okay.
And this is great for painting. If you paint the sides, you can hang it up just like this without having to frame it.
Oh, that's great. That makes it a lot easier.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we have a bevy of brushes, and all sizes. Most of them are flat, but we also have some pointed brushes for details.
Okay.
You should have acrylic paints, and the acrylic paints are opaque paints, but they are water soluble until they dry. So you can paint on cloth with them, and then after they dry you can wash the cloth. They're also they're great pro for acrylic paints is that they dry fast.
Right.
The con is they dry fast. So it's hard to blend acrylic paints unless you're pretty careful. But they're opaque, so you can paint over any mistakes that you make. So they're the most forgiving of all the paints.
Right.
You should have a couple of paper plates or something else to use as a palette, and you should have 2 cups of water, and one of them is going to be the dirty water and one of them is going to be the clean water. And you should have some popsicle sticks for mixing.
Okay.
And then paper towels for cleaning your brushes and drying the brushes.
Okay, and I think we're going to have a list somewhere below the video where we can list out all the items that you're going to need to do this today. So
right.
You should, for those of you that are watching this live right now and going through this live with us today, you'll have all your supplies already. But for those watching later, we will put a list below the video, so if you wanted to do it later, you'll know exactly what you need. Okay. Let's get started, Jan. What's the first thing we need to do?
Okay, the first thing we need to do is put some paints out on our palette.
Okay.
So we're going to start with white, and I want to emphasize this point over and over again.
Okay.
And that is that you always mix the darker color into the lighter color. So you would never start with red and start adding white to it, because by the time you're finished you would have enough paint to paint this room pink.
Right.
So we always start with the lightest color. So I'm going to put out some white paint on the palette, and we're going to need a little bit here. This is what we're going to do when we paint the orange, and you can see on the sample that we've used orange through the center of it, so we don't need a lot of orange. And then please clean or change popsicle sticks so that you can put out some yellow.
And for those of you watching at home, up behind Jan on the right there is the finished item we're going to be painting today. So you can kind of see what it's going to look like. So we'll leave that there the whole time, and you can kind of use that as a guide for what we're doing today. But that's the finished piece right there.
Okay, so now we're going to mix some yellow.
Now, do we tend to start with the background first when we're doing these kind of paintings, or?
Yes, and because the acrylic is opaque, we can just paint the background and not have to worry about going around the trees.
Right, because that would be a lot more difficult to try and do that.
Well, it would take a lot more time.
Well, yeah, so we're trying to do this in layers. We start with the background colors first, and then we come forward. And that just makes it a whole lot easier.
So we put some yellow out.
So what you're mixing now, is that the colors that we see in the sky kind of back there?
This is the color that we're going to put in the background.
Yeah.
And the orange going across.
Yeah, okay.
So now we need some red. And you can see on the popsicle stick that this is about how much red I'm using. But look how much tinting value that has.
Right, that's a lot, yeah. So be careful with the red, don't put too much in. It's best to
You can always add more.
Yeah, best to start off with a little bit and add more if you need to.
Right. Okay, now before we start painting, we need to put out the purple for the background.
Okay.
So again, we're going to start with white. And I would say 3 blobs of paint on your popsicle stick would be enough.
All right.
And then we're going to add the colors that make purple. And if you go back to your elementary classes, I'm sure you remember that red and yellow make orange, and that red and blue make purple.
Right.
We're painting with a limited palette, which means that we only are using 5 colors.
Okay.
And the delight in using 5 colors is in your pocketbook.
Well, and it makes it easier for people that may be a little bit daunted by doing something like this, or maybe just beginners. You're not using so many colors, and just makes it a bit easier for everybody.
That's true. And I certainly do not want you to feel intimidated by painting, because I believe that anybody can paint and should enjoy it.
Right.
So that's what we're aiming for. If there's something that we do that's not a color that you like at all, feel free to use a different color.
Yeah.
So I'm using lavender in the background, and the orange for the light coming through the trees. But if you wanted to use more of a blue, you certainly could.
Okay.
I think that one's got a lot of blue in it, so I'm going to add a little bit more red.
Yeah, don't feel like you have to match the colors you see in the example perfectly. Like Jan's saying, if you're happy with the colors you mix, then go ahead and use them. It doesn't have to match this exactly.
This is very true. Sometimes it takes a while to get the color mixed up that you really want.
Now you could use, if you didn't have paper plates, you could use regular plates if you wanted to, if you got some older ones lying around, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And my favorite things to use are the lids of the food that John Knox Village delivers to my door every day.
Okay, yeah. Reuse those items that you would usually recycle or throw away.
Right. So now we're going to start, and somewhere near the middle, we're going to paint the orange on, and you're going to use your widest brush out of your collection.
And the widest brush is because you want to get a nice coverage right off the bat.
Well, and also you always want to use the largest brush you can for the area you're painting.
Okay.
And you can go right over the side, and you can decide kind of yourself how wide you want this orange part to be. I like to have it a little above center, so we have plenty of ground to put the bottom of the trees on.
It goes on that canvas pretty nicely, doesn't it?
It does. It's very nice paint. Actually, acrylic paint is made from polymer, and this is the same thing that you paint your walls with.
Right.
It's latex paint.
Okay. And like you said earlier, it's completely water soluble, so it's easy to wash your brush out and do the cleanup afterwards.
Yes. My master's degree is in oil painting, and I love oils. They have brilliant colors, but there's two reasons I stopped using them. And one of them is having flammable stuff, which is the turpentine that you have to clean oils with.
Right, and it doesn't smell very nice either, does it?
Well, they now have a hybrid turpentine called Turpenoid.
All right.
It has no odor.
I didn't know that.
Well, the problem with Turpenoid is that for a pint of it, it's $25.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And the other thing about oil paints, that the reason I stopped using them, is because when I got my master's degree, a large tube of oil paint was usually around $6. Well, now a large tube of oil paint is around $36.
Oh, yeah, that's quite a jump.
Yeah. So I've taken up with acrylic paints. I not only do a lot of my own painting, but I also volunteer for painting with the Hobby Hut. The Hobby Hut makes toys for kids for Christmas, and they make trucks and cars and all that kind of stuff, but they also make hobby horses and little cradles. And so they called for volunteers to paint with the Hobby Hut, and I volunteered thinking they wanted somebody to come in and paint designs on them. Well, what they were asking for was somebody to come in and paint just paint.
Right.
So make them different colors. So I painted a design on them, and the next day the head of the Hobby Hut came over and he said, "You the one that's painting all those pretty things on those?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, you want to paint some more?"
I think well, as you're talking about that, we're going to put a little picture up on the screen so you can see what Jan's talking about there. They actually come out really good. I took the photographs of those, and there's an incredible amount of toys that the Hobby Hut makes, and you guys that are painting all these toys for these kids, you do an amazing job with that.
Well, we have a volunteer, Mary Scheit, who really does a wonderful job painting very nicely and without making a mess the basic color of all these. I don't have to worry about that. I'm not good at it, painting everything the same color.
So that's the base that you get for you to do your thing from.
Right. The guys at the Hobby Hut make the wooden toys, and they go to Mary and she paints them. Then they come to me and I paint the designs on them, and then they go back to Mary and she corrects all my mistakes.
So it's quite a production line to get those toys complete, ready for those kids.
Right. And last year we had over 500 toys that they donated.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Now this year they're not going to have that many because the Hobby Hut was closed down for a long time during COVID. Yeah. They're open again with restrictions about how many people can be in there at a time and wearing masks and so forth. So they were in production again, but the toys have to be done by the 1st of December, so we're facing a deadline here.
Yeah, you're going to be busy the next few weeks.
Now, I don't know how I did this, but I came out with exactly the right amount of paint, and I hope all of you did, or excess, because there's nothing more frustrating than running out of a color right in the middle of painting.
Right.
So, okay, now you notice that where the orange met, I did go in over it a little bit with the purple so it would blend a little bit at those edges and wouldn't be a harsh straight line.
Okay.
So now we have to make this, wait until this dries. So this might be a good time to break out your wine.
All right, yeah, good idea. Have a sip of wine.
But also I can talk a little bit about something else that's going to be coming up during this. In the recent years, there's been a lot of research on the brain, and they have discovered different parts of the brain function differently. So the left side of your brain is where language is, and if you have a stroke on the left side of your brain, that's one of the things you'll lose is language. It's also the math side of the brain. It's also the very organized and orderly side of the brain. And both sides of the brain work together, but at different times you are using one side or the other. Sometimes you can use both. So the right side of the brain is the side of the brain in which we rely on our intuition. We, instead of reading a recipe like our left brain would do and following the recipe straight step by step, the recipe or the cook that we make are the ones that, like my grandmother, who never wrote a recipe down and of course could never pass on her recipes, but they just do it by instinct. So we use a lot of instinct, and it's also the side of the brain where art and music reside.
Right.
Now when I'm painting, you will find that as I'm doing this, I will fade off in the middle of a sentence. And it's because I'm so deep in my right brain that my left brain doesn't catch up or do it. So when I do that, just think, well, the old gal's having a right effect, brain effect. So I wanted to warn you about that effect.
Well, I'll keep you talking, so hopefully that won't happen.
Okay, that'll be good. So, I wanted to also tell you that we moved to John Knox Village 3 years ago, and the reason that we moved is because my husband was in need of some health care, and we lived in a 3-story house with lots of steps, and so that was not going to work. So one of the times that he was in the hospital, I decided that we needed to move someplace smaller and with some help available. So my daughter and I came out and looked at John Knox Village, and we looked at all the different options: apartments, houses, cottages, duplexes, apartments, everything. And we decided on a cottage, which is basically a duplex without a garage. The garage has been turned into another bedroom, and this suited us fine. While my husband was in the hospital, I signed a contract to come out here to John Knox Village. So when he came home, we're living in a different place.
Okay.
Thank goodness that he really liked it. And he soon needed the help of security when he would fall. He was in the care center, and I loved it that all of that was so closely available. But I also loved it because there were so many things to do out here. There are so many things to volunteer for, as I told you before. I quickly volunteered for 2 things in art. I'm also on a couple of committees. We have movies every weekend when there's not a COVID virus, of course. There are 7 restaurants out here to choose from to eat in. There's a lot of other restaurants and shopping really close by. The village takes care of us really well during this COVID virus. So we're very happy that we moved out here, and I can't wait for it to reopen again so that we can get back to doing the normal things that we do out here.
And we hear a lot from people that after they've moved to the village and they realise everything that's here and they're enjoying everything that's here, they wish they'd moved in a lot sooner. We hear that a lot.
Well, you can also hear it from me.
Yeah.
Because we really wish we had moved in a lot sooner.
Yeah. And
I know some people that were very smart and moved in when they were a lot younger, and they've just taken part in everything.
Yeah,
the village.
There's so many people involved in so many different things here.
Oh yes, and if you want to be alone, if you don't want to socialize, if you basically want to stay to yourself, that's certainly one of the options out here.
Yeah.
But if you everything you do also nets you new friends.
Oh yeah, it is.
And I do water aerobics, and I have a whole group of friends that are in the water aerobics class. I go to the Village Fitness Center. There's another group of people that are in there. I have a group at the Hobby Hut. I have a group, and I've really enjoyed all the people that have taken my classes. I've taught drawing and painting, all different kinds of classes.
Yeah.
So
we've been doing a few of these things online because we can't obviously have groups to get together right now. So we're going to be doing more of these kind of things online. So it's great for everybody to kind of join in with us and do this in your own time from your own space. So,
yes. And you're showing good movies too.
We are, yes. There's lots of things we're trying to keep our residents entertained with at the moment. Obviously, with things being closed in various parts of the village, or some things being closed, we're trying really hard to keep them entertained and keep them active and involved. So yeah.
Well, and also one of the things that I really appreciate is the food delivery program.
Oh yeah.
Where you can call in and within 45 minutes you have anything off the menu at one of my favorite restaurants out here, and someone shows up to the door just magically.
Yeah, and if you're watching on YouTube right now, we've got other videos that we've done that show like the curbside pickup at our restaurants, some of the behind the scenes stuff at our restaurants. We even do a bit on a delivery there. So yeah, there's lots of stuff you can watch on our YouTube channel that kind of shows you a little bit of what's going on in the village right now.
And I also like the fact that we have the village bus that takes us any place you want to go around the village if you don't want to drive and you're going someplace. It also, during normal times, goes to the grocery store, takes you to Walmart, takes you to the shopping center across the street, so you can always find a way to get around if you don't drive, or if you do drive,
that's huge for people that don't want to drive anymore. We'll get you to where you need to go, right?
Right.
All right.
Okay, I think maybe this is dry enough. I'm seeing a few wetter streaks in this, but as I touch it, it doesn't come off. A couple places it might come off, but I think we're ready.
All right, so what's the next stage?
So the next step is we're going to do trees, and we'll need white. So we'll put some more white out. And the reason I put it out on the palette is that you do not want to contaminate your colors by dipping into them, because I might dip in to the white and then dip into the blue, and suddenly my blue has a lot of white in it, and so that's going to be problematic when we do other colors.
Okay. So
we're going to start with white. Now, these are birch trees. They're fairly straight, but they're certainly not real straight. So if you make it crooked, that's how trees grow. So don't worry about it. And I'm going to start over here on my left. If you're left-handed, I would suggest you start on your right, because you're going to drag your hand through something that's wet. And we're going to employ atmospheric perspective. And atmospheric perspective is the kind of perspective that artists use when there are no straight lines. Linear perspective is when you're drawing a village or a house or anything like that has straight lines, and that's linear perspective. But this is atmospheric perspective. So here's the whole rule. Things that are farther in the distance are smaller, lighter, bluer, higher on the paper. So if you look at the trees in our example, you'll see that the base of those trees that are farthest away are higher on the paper and they're smaller. So we're going to start with those trees in the background and start at the bottom. You can start at the top if you want to. I just like better starting at the bottom. And so I'm going to put my first tree in and leave it at about that width. Go back in and fill that little area. And so then we're going to go over here, and we're going to make the baseline a little different than the first one.
I'm going to come in and get a little bit closer and we can see that.
Okay.
What we're doing right here. Just for a second. It might help those people watching.
Sure.
Just see that a little bit closer. So excuse me if you see the camera coming in, but I want to get a closer shot here. There we go.
And I'm using a flat brush. You can use any of them that are flat, but I'm going to change here to a little bit smaller one. And keep in mind that, you know, like I said, trees lean a little bit. So when you are painting, you can pretty much tell when your canvas is drier, because as you look at it a little bit from the side and the light shines on it, where it's still shiny, it's still wet. And we have a few streaks here, and here, and here that are still wet, but I don't think it's going to make that much difference in us painting these tree trunks over them, because these ones in the background probably are maybe a little better even if they have another shine on them or another color in it, mixed in them. So now I put out a little bit of blue and I've got white in my brush. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go down the side of the tree with a little bit of blue.
So that just creates a little bit of shadow, a little bit of depth to the tree.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes it look round.
Right. Rather than just being completely flat. Because trees are not completely flat, are they?
No. At least I haven't seen anyone. I think I'm making flat Christmas trees now, but that isn't what we're painting.
Right.
So I'm also going to use that blue. I'm not sure about I like, so I'm going to add a little bit of black. And black, as you can imagine, is highly tinting. So I'm going to even go back and use a different brush, a little smaller one. I see there's a filbert here, and a filbert brush is one that comes out and is rounded at the tip.
Okay.
So I'm going to pick up a little black and add a little of my white that I've got out here.
So that just gives you a little bit more control with the brush?
Well, it makes it smaller, so the shadow is going to be thinner.
Okay.
So we can do, well, I see that I've done about 4 or 5 trees here. And then if you want to stop and go back in and put the shadow along the side. To make it look rounder. And again, if the shadow, you can blend the shadow in a little more. You may have to put a little more white on your brush to do that. I'm finding that's good here.
Yes, if you feel like you've put a little too much of the grey or bluey grey in there, you can come back in with the white after and fill back in.
Correct.
Yeah. That's a good thing. The good thing about acrylic paints, you can do that with acrylic paints.
That's right. And I always say when I'm teaching different media that acrylic paint is the most forgiving of all paint, because you can correct anything.
Right.
And in fact, if I decided that this is just not going like I want it to, and I'm just going to give up, I can let the whole thing dry and paint a completely different picture on top of it.
Okay. So a little tip for everybody is if this is not going exactly right for you right now with these trees, just take a break, have a glass of wine, take a few sips of that wine, just sit and wait for it to dry, and then come back in when it's dry and redo it. Yes,
that's very good advice.
Because this is not a race, right? There's no time limit on when you get this done.
Absolutely
it's in
not.
your own time, yeah.
And you should not put pressure on yourself either, because this is supposed to be fun.
Right.
So the other thing you might go and do at this point is to make sure that the bottom of your trees are round, and with the semicircle going down this way, so that it also helps to put the illusion of the trees being round.
Okay. And you don't have to paint the exact same number of trees as we've got in the example here either.
No.
It's just whatever you want to do, and this is just a guide. So if you want to paint more or less trees on your picture, that's completely fine.
Exactly. I really wish we could all get together and do this, because it's a lot of fun when we're together. And also it's a lot of fun to see what everybody else is doing, because I would guarantee you, even with me painting along with you, we would have as many people as are in the class to be different.
Right.
None would be the same.
Well, hopefully when we're done and everybody's finished their paintings at home, maybe if you take a picture of what you've done, you can email it into us, and we'll put an email address where you can send that in to us.
Right.
I know Jan will be excited to see what you've come up with, right, Jan?
Exactly.
And it'll be good to share with everybody else. Everybody's picture is going to look a little bit different, and that's completely fine. But yeah, just to see what everybody's done would be great.
Yes. And remember that you don't need any experience at all to do this. It's just also adds a new experience to what you're doing. Okay, so now I'm going to do some trees that are closer to us, and that means that they're going to be a little bit wider, and they're going to be farther down on the paper, the ones that are in front. And I'm sure you can tell by looking at the example which trees are closest to you.
And that would also be, you're doing those also a little bit thicker in width as well, right?
Right.
To give that sense of perspective in the picture. Right.
In fact, I think I'm going to go down them all twice, so you can really see the difference in the width of them.
Right.
And one thing I would charge you with is, let's make all the trees end at a different level. I think I'll go back now and put that shadow in that we talked about.
Okay.
Whoops. We want to kind of blend it into the white, so we don't have a completely straight line.
Okay. Yeah, because trees, like you said earlier, trees are not completely straight.
No. These look a lot straighter than other trees, because that's the way birches grow.
Yeah, so these are kind of a silver birch tree.
Right. Or an aspen.
Okay. I guess what you could also do, if you wanted to do another one of these another time, this is obviously with using kind of fall colors for right now. You could do like a spring or summer kind of version of it using different colors, yeah.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of people that are doing similar to this, and they do make them for every season. So if you wanted to paint 4 paintings, you could change them for spring, summer, winter, fall.
Yeah, and there wouldn't be that much you would need to change to make that work, right?
Right.
Just use of different colors mainly, and different colors on the leaves and things like that.
When I said that spring, summer, winter, fall, it brought back memories. I don't know how many of you remember Howdy Doody, but do you remember Princess Summer, Spring, Winter, Fall? Well, I'm telling you what my age is now, so.
All right, it's looking good.
Okay, I think that's it. So I'm going to put these brushes into the water. You don't want to leave your brushes out of water for too long, because next time you pick it up to paint with, it's going to be stiff as a board.
Right.
So you want to be careful with acrylics. I wear an apron when I paint, but I have half a closet full of my painting clothes that I've already got paint on somehow. So here we are with this. And of course these trees should dry a little bit. And we need to decide on what color we're going to do the leaves. So there's one tree here that sticks out at me that needs a shadow on the side.
And I'm going to come in a little bit closer again with my other camera here, so hopefully people can see what we're doing a little bit better here. So excuse me if I'm in shot again for a second, but I'm just going to get a little bit of a different angle here. Hopefully you can see what Jan is doing there. And I'm going to come back out so you can see from the original view. Once in a while I like to come in close, different camera angles. It makes it a little bit more interesting, and we can definitely see what Jan is doing. Hopefully you can all see what's happening at home just fine.
Okay, this needs to dry for just a couple of seconds here.
All right.
So, one of the things that I do in my classes is I love history of art. I love artists from all ages. But I also like to collect stories about them. So I know that all of you know the Mona Lisa. So let me just start with her. People over the ages have said that the Mona Lisa isn't finished because she has no eyebrows. And if you notice the Mona Lisa, her hairline is up about here. Well, let me tell you that during the Renaissance, this was a style for women. They would shave their heads up to halfway because a high forehead indicated extremely high intelligence.
Huh.
And also they would shave their eyebrows so that women should not ever have facial hair. And this was a standard of beauty. And Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa, also known as La Gioconda, for a merchant who was having the portrait of his wife painted. And Leonardo took 17 years to paint it. And the merchant was very, very impatient about it. But Leonardo da Vinci had developed a real interest in atmospheric perspective. And so what was taking him so long was painting the background. Now, if you've never looked closely at the background in the Mona Lisa, you'll notice that it's a landscape. And it uses the tenets of atmospheric perspective to show the distance in them. The Renaissance artists were very, very interested in perspective. Also, in the background of the Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, if you look out the doors, it is atmospheric perspective behind them.
Okay, yeah.
And there's linear perspective for the building that they're in.
Yep.
And at the vanishing point, which is the point at which all lines come together in linear perspective, that is exactly where the head of Jesus is painted.
Gotcha.
Leonardo da Vinci was a supreme artist, but he was not very responsible, so he painted the Last Supper in the refectory of a monastery, and the head abbot was on him all the time for painting, for him to stop, to get finished with this painting and not leave it. So Leonardo da Vinci used models for all different figures, and he used the abbot for the figure of Judas. So there's a lot of things you can learn about different artists besides Van Gogh cutting off his ear.
Right.
So
interesting.
So I'm going to change now to my other paper plate because I pretty much put up a lot of stuff on that other one. So now I'm going to put out a few different dollops of white. And I'm going to paint fall leaves in this. But if you want to paint any color, feel free. Now, if you want to paint green, you know that you would mix together yellow and blue, and you would get green. So I think the first color I want to paint with is kind of a yellow, and we can call that aspen yellow. That was a clean brush is the only reason I use that, because I'm always telling you not to use dipping right into the cup. And as you can see, my right brain is trying desperately to take over here. So
rein it in, Jan. Come on, rein it in.
So now I'm using the filbert brush that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
So that you kind of get an idea of what size these are. And we're going to start just putting in dabs of leaves, and some may come down farther on the trees, some higher up. If you want to use all yellow on your leaves, feel free to do so. And the leaves definitely grow over the trunks. So, and also some of the leaves stop growing higher up on the trunks than they do on the lower ones.
So just don't be scared to use your brush here, right? I mean, you're not trying to in detail draw each or paint each leaf in there. You're using just like a little dabbing technique right there. And
yes.
Don't be scared of it, is what I'm trying to say. Just put the leaves where you think they should go. Right.
And this is kind of the fun part of it too, dabbing away and.
Right. Now, I guess if you've had a little bit too much wine at this point,
yes,
you need to be a little bit more careful than others.
Well, I don't think we've provided you with enough wine that you would.
Right.
But I'm not drinking any at the moment, so maybe, I don't know. This does take a little time.
Right.
And right now, while I'm doing this one color, it could get a little tedious watching.
So you do the whole of the area you want in that one yellow color, and then you're going to come in with another color afterwards.
Correct. And I can see by standing back or leaning back and looking at it a little bit that I need to come down a little farther on a few trees here. So.
And you can look at that example up on the top right there as kind of give you an idea of where you want to be putting these leaves here. Mm-hmm. But there's no set rule. You can do whatever you feel is right.
Correct. And whatever you like. Maybe you have an idea that this is something you want to hang in a certain room, and you want to use colors that are good for that.
Yeah, colors that are in the room already, that's a good idea.
I don't see it on television so much anymore, but you remember when they used to always advertise sofa-sized paintings? Which I always wondered what that was. But I guess it's paintings that are big enough to go over your sofa at home. Okay. So how they do those is they start out with one person who does backgrounds, and they paint all the backgrounds on all the paintings. Then you come to the one who does mountains, and that person puts in all the mountains on all the paintings. So it's an assembly line going down, and each person using their skills in painting is painting a different scene. Okay. Which I think would be horribly boring, but...
Well, yeah, if you keep painting the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Maybe they switch around once in a while.
I hadn't thought of that. Maybe they do. So I taught high school for 38 years. And then I taught, or I was an administrator in a fine arts academy that met in the summer with independents called the Bingham Academy of Arts. And our superintendent wanted to have this academy, so he made it free to any students who signed it up for it. And he provided all the teachers and everything. In the first several years that he had it, we took students on the road even. We went to Washington, D.C., we went to Santa Fe to hear opera, one of the few places, by the way, that has opera in the summer. The other one is Des Moines, Iowa. And so I have a lot of former students that have been very, very successful in what they do. And one of my greatest pleasures is having these students contact me and tell me what they're doing now in later life. So this is one of the things that I like about Facebook. I don't like all the ads and the political ads, but I like to hear from my former students.
Yeah, so social media is pretty good at keeping in touch with people that are distant, you know, that are not here.
Now down here, I'm putting the falling leaves in. And you want to make things that are on the ground, you want to think about them in a more horizontal way. So you can see that I'm painting more horizontal down here. The reason for that is that it suggests flat land or land if it's horizontal. Okay, now I'm going to mix up some orange. So I'm going to put out some yellow that is uncontaminated with white. And then I'm going to take some red.
And be sparing with that red, as Jan said earlier. It's easier for you to add more than...
Right.
Yeah. And
that's what I'm going to have to do here. I'm going to have to add more yellow.
A bit more yellow in there, yeah.
Now that wasn't a bad orange to have for tree leaves either, you know, darker ones, but okay. So now let's start with our orange leaves. And if you want to think about it and you say, okay, I want this area to have more orange than this area in it, it's usually a good way to paint the leaves.
And this is using the same brush you were just using for the yellow?
Yes, yeah. And you can change brushes. And changing brushes is a lot of times a really good idea because you get different size leaves.
Right. And you're not using the paint like too wet right there. It's kind of just a little bit of paint on that brush, right?
Yeah, right.
Because you don't want big blobs of color here. It'd be kind of too much.
True.
So sometimes there I'm noticing that your brush is almost dry and you're still dabbing there, which just as a little technique that you use just to vary the strength of the color used in there.
Yes, and also to make varying sizes of leaves.
Right, and also to give some perspective too, right? Because the leaves closest to us will be a stronger color than the ones way back.
True. So I'm making some of the leaves, see, this is one of the trees that's closer up to us. So I'm putting a little bit larger leaves in on it. Now, the leaves, when you're doing the leaves, they do not have to be completely dry before you paint another color over them.
Okay.
Because it doesn't matter if they pick up some of the colors of the yellow, for instance, that we're painting with now.
You probably want that in some instances.
The more variation.
Yeah. So we hope everyone at home is following along and having a lot of fun doing this today.
Well, you know, you can see all this that I'm doing at this point. You want some more of the leaves to go and kind of go back here to the orange, and we don't have a definite horizon line on this because unless you're really far away, you very seldom see a definite horizon line.
Okay.
I can remember one time when my husband and I were traveling and we were in a condo that was on 3rd floor, and we were watching the ocean out the window, and I saw a cruise ship in the far distance going by, and it's the first time I've ever seen the curve of the earth, because you could see the horizon and see the curve of the earth to see that far away.
Right.
I didn't even know there was any place where you could see that. Okay, now I'm going to, I haven't gone all the way across on this, so I thought what we'd do is mix up the next color and go back in a little bit. So now I'm putting out some red. And I'm going to add a tick of black. You definitely don't want to add too much black. But these would be the dark red leaves of fall. So you can see that we have kind of the burgundy color for some of those really dark leaves, the way the maples turn really dark later in the season and so forth.
Okay.
So I'm going to change to this little flat brush. These brushes don't have the numbers on them, or else my eyes aren't seeing them. But it's this little flat brush here, and I'm going to change to that brush to put in these dark red leaves. So
that instantly adds depth to the picture, doesn't it? So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, always. So remember, as things get closer to you, they get brighter, and there's more contrast between light and dark. When we say that in atmospheric perspective, as things get farther away from you and they get grayer, then we're talking about everything in it is closer together in value, or light and dark. I hope that one of the things that this class does for you is to increase your observation of things around you. I always have students that tell me, you know, I've noticed this or I've noticed that more. So notice when things are far away from you, how blue they are. The most exotic capture of the values for me was when we visited the Smoky Mountains, and immediately knew what the Smoky Mountains, why they named it the Smoky Mountains, because they are really blue in the distance.
Yeah, I've been there also. It's a beautiful place, and yeah, you can definitely see why they named it that.
Right, you can.
So like Jan was saying, you like, especially now this time of year, the fall, if you've got trees out in your backyard, you can take a look out there, look out your window and kind of see how those leaves are on the trees right now, and it'll give you an idea of how you should be painting this right now.
Another thing I'd like to encourage you to do is if you have leaves on the ground, go out and pick some of the bigger ones up, or the nicer ones, the ones that aren't crumbled up and everything. Take them in and dry them in a book or press them so they lie flat. And then take your acrylic colors and paint them different colors. And you can paint a design on them, but you can paint some of them yellow, some of them orange, some of them red, and create a collage. I do a lot of that and paint the leaves, and then I turn those leaves into note cards.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And I send them out. I'm trying to be more diligent in reaching out to my friends during this pandemic, because I know I always like to get a card or something from my friends.
Right. You're just a creative person anyway. You're always doing this kind of stuff, right?
I'm always, yes.
Yeah.
I don't like to be idle.
Right.
However, I've been watching a lot of television lately, especially Netflix.
Yeah.
My friends and I are always calling each other and say, "Oh, here's a great one you need to watch." My friend recommended this one that I really loved. It's called Winter Sun, and it's a Turkish movie. And of course, you have to watch the subtitles. But here I am again, right mode. She said it's only one season, but it's really good. So I started watching it. Yeah, there's only one season, but there are 50 episodes.
Oh, wow.
So that took a lot of time, and I didn't get much painting done during that period when I was watching it, because I couldn't wait to watch the next episode.
Okay.
Now, you can mix up as many colors as you want, as many different colors as you want to do the leaves. But I think now I'm going to move on to the next thing that I want to show you, and that is taking a little of the blue, a little of the black. Use the other end of my stick. Put them out here. Mix them together. And then put a little bit of that into one of the whites we put out. So we have kind of a blue-black here. I'm going to use now one of the flat brushes that we've been using.
Okay.
Put that in there. And what I want to do now is add some shadows on the trees from the leaf canopy. So right under the canopy, go in and paint a little bit of your tree with a darker shadow on it.
Okay.
That might be a little dark, but I kind of like it.
Again, adding some more depth in there.
Definitely. And I'm extending the shadow down. You know, we did the shadows on the left side, so I'm kind of extending that down a little more to be more. And you can see also that this makes this orange stand out a little bit too, and that's because blue and orange are complementary colors. And you can make colors that when you're painting, you can make colors lighter or darker or duller, but you can't make them brighter. The brightness of the paint is as bright as you're going to get. And I also like to encourage people, when they think of painting, that they think of using color. Because why would you paint if you don't want to use color? And I'm kind of a colorist. Now remember, these trees over here are not finished, but I'll put the shadow in anyway. And then I think I'll come down here at the base of these and add a little more shadow down here too. So they look like they're solid into the ground. Whoops, got a lot of stuff there. So I don't want that quite like that, so I'm going in with a little more white. Blend it in. Now I also need to tell those of you that might want to use brown, how to mix brown. You start with orange and try to get a good balance between red and yellow in it. And then you either add black or blue to that mixture. And you will get, now be cautious of how much you add at a time. Kind of go gradual.
Now if you did go a bit heavy-handed, you could wait for that to dry and come back in with white,
right,
if you needed to.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you can just come back in with white now.
Blend, yeah,
like I'm doing.
Like you're doing, you're just blending it in, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is working.
Right. Okay, so we definitely need, I forgot to do this when we were painting this color, but we definitely need some of this dark red on the ground. And you know, probably you can look at the tree above and see how much dark red it has on it, but you know, leaves blow around. So feel free to put them any place you want to put them. And you can also, you get the choice of how much of this leaf mass you want on the ground. You know, one of the things that I love about art, and I am no mathematician, let me tell you. My best friend was head of the math department, and it's a wonder we got along at all, because she was always telling me all about logics and everything, and I was telling her about intuition. And And you might want to put, a few dabs in here that might indicate individual leaves.
Okay. Because that's obviously getting closer to the viewer of that,
Correct.
Of that picture, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that sometimes I like to do when I'm doing paintings and is to incorporate, I got a drip here, I got to fix. Is to incorporate some metallic gold. And if you look on that painting there, you'll see there are two little swatches of metallic gold that shine more than others do. And sometimes that's really nice to put into something like this where you want a little more accent or whatever.
Okay.
So now there's one thing left to do, and we're going to use the smallest pointed brush that you have. And we're going to dip into some black, and I'm dipping into, since I don't have any other color on my brush, I haven't used it before, then I can use this. And we're going to make the round things that are on the birch tree limbs.
Gotcha.
And notice that there's not any one of them that are straight. They go around like an ellipse. So, in nature, you're going to find very few things that are perfectly straight.
And you don't want to go too kind of heavy-handed with this, right? Just a little bit here and there.
Right, right. And some of these I'm using dry brush, which means that my brush is running out of paint, and I'm using the amount of paint that's just left on the brush.
Okay.
And it makes it look like, tree bark that's not smooth. Now, here at John Knox, we do have some other art classes other than what I teach. There's ceramic classes where you can decorate ceramic pieces. And one of the residents out here years ago bought out a ceramic studio, so she has all of this bisqueware and is very generous in letting everybody pick out what they want to paint. A lot of people paint Christmas figurines and that kind of stuff, but there's also a lot of beautiful pieces that she has, and they decorate those on Friday afternoons in the art room. One of the newest things we have out here, and it's something that I'm taking the class because I really love it, is the acrylic pour. And I'm sure you've seen examples, especially on YouTube and the internet and everything, of these beautiful colors where they pour acrylics and mix them right on the canvas. You get marbleized looking things that are really wonderful.
Okay.
And one of our residents teaches that too. There's also a lot of music opportunities. There are several choirs. There's a bell choir. There's a tap dancing class. And every year there's something at the pavilion where everybody performs and shows off all their things. So
there's also a theatre group as well, isn't there?
Yes, there's a good theatre group, and they put on a great show every year. So you would add more things in here if you want them.
Okay.
And of course finish all of this. And the last thing you do when anytime that you do any piece of artwork is you sign your name.
All right.
So I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you enroll in some of them if you move out here, some of the other classes that we have, and it's been a lot of fun.
All right. Well, it's been a lot of fun watching you do this today, Jan.
Thank you.
All right.
If we had some wine, we'd toast.
We would, yes. We just have to let everybody at home toast us for
Right.
us. Yeah.
And I hope you'll put your pictures on the internet because I can't wait to see them.
Yeah, we'll, like I said earlier, we'll put an email address somewhere or let people know that signed up for this where to send their pictures to so that we can take a look at them, and I'm sure Jan would love to see that.
Yeah, I'd love to see them. I'd love to put them all together too.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, thanks for joining us today with the Paint and Sip class with Jan, our resident here at John Knox Village. We hope everyone enjoyed it. It was certainly a lot of fun watching Jan paint here today, and I hope you all managed to follow along at home. So thanks a lot, Jan. Thanks for teaching us today. It was a lot of fun. Did you enjoy yourself?
I had a great time, and I want to tell everybody at home, now's the time to finish your wine.
All right. Sounds like a plan. All right, thanks everybody. We will see you again hopefully next time. I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.